I don't know what that means. Gary, I don't know. So, the topic is our title. Okay? In this article, we are going to be arguing whether or not veterans who commit a crime but also have PTSD, whether they should be exempt or not from the death penalty. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to read through this article together, and then we're going to talk about the practice. Okay? So, on January 12, 1998, Andrew Brannon was driving his truck at 98 miles an hour on a country road near his Dublin, Georgia home when he was pulled over by Deputy Kyle Dinkeller. Brannon, a white-haired 66-year-old man, got out of his truck, shouted profanities, and danced around yelling, here I am, shoot me." He then attacked the deputy, and a gunfight ensued, in which Brannon, the guy driving his truck at 98 miles an hour, shot Dinkeller, the deputy, 9 times with a rifle. Video footage from the deputy's dashboard camera inflamed public opinion. Dinkeller was 22 years old and married with 1 child and another baby on the way. Brannon received a death sentence, and on January 13th became the first person executed in 2015. But Joseph Loveland, an Atlanta-based attorney who tried to commute Brannon's sentence to life imprisonment without parole, what does commute mean? Not quite. If you want, Andrew? Sort of. They bargained to do this. It means to change. So if you are going to, if an attorney is arguing to commute a sentence, it's meaning that he was originally sentenced and given the sentence of the death penalty, but the attorney, the lawyer, is trying to commute that or change that to life imprisonment without parole. But they would have to bargain and do some of that. Says the jury and sentencing judge never heard the whole story. Before he made headlines as a convicted murderer, Brannon was a decorated combat veteran struggling to hold his life together. He volunteered for service in the Army in 1968 and trained as a parachutist. In 1970, he was deployed to Vietnam, where he served as a forward observer in an artillery unit. Brannon twice assumed command of his unit when the commanding officer was killed, and was awarded the Bronze Star and 2 Army Commendation Medals for outstanding service. He was honorably discharged from active duty in 1971 and served in the reserves for several years. After his discharge, Brannon tried to reintegrate to civilian life, but in the early 1980s, he began to experience severe psychological and emotional problems. He had a hard time keeping a job and his marriage fell apart. He sought treatment from the Veterans Administration, or the VA, which declared him partially disabled due to service-related post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. PTSD is a severe mental disorder that can affect intellectual and adaptive functioning, trigger flashbacks to traumatic events, and impair one's judgment. As its name implies, it can develop after exposure to a life-threatening event. Brannon's case isn't an isolated one. About 20% of military personnel who served in war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan, and up to 30% of Vietnam War veterans have experienced it in their lifetimes, according to the National Center for PTSD Statistics. Brannon was hospitalized several times and admitted into the VA's intensive PTSD treatment program. In 1991, the VA found he was 100% disabled due to service-connected PTSD. His VA psychiatrist, William Boyer, also diagnosed him with bipolar disorder in 1996. According to his doctors, Brannon withdrew from society, only had contact with other Vietnam War vets, and lived in a shack resembling a war zone bunker. Legal scholars and mental health experts believe the criminal justice system should treat convicted veterans suffering war trauma differently than other criminals. In a 2009 Fordham Law Review article, Anthony Giordino, an attorney and former Marine, believes that veterans suffering with service-related PTSD and traumatic brain injuries should receive a categorical exemption from the death penalty. What does it mean to be exempt from something? Not have to do it, not allowed, not be given that sentence. Okay? So what they're arguing here is, should a person that has committed a capital offense, murder, whatever the case may be, but is also a veteran with PTSD, diagnosed PTSD, should they be exempt from that death penalty or not given that death penalty? If the death penalty is truly only for the worst offenders, justice requires that combat veterans suffering at the time of their offenses from service-related PTSD or TBI not be executed or sentenced to death, he wrote. While PTSD cannot excuse criminal behavior, Giordino believes it should reduce culpability or guiltiness. PTSD can impair your ability to recognize that acting in a militaristic manner is not acceptable, he told me in an interview. Veterans with PTSD might use their training in an inappropriate manner while among civilians. Giordino isn't alone in making this argument. Mental health experts Hal S. Wurtzel and David B. Arsenegus made a similar case for exempting veterans affected by war trauma from the death penalty. Military training in combat combined with traumatic experiences may have an impact on aggression and behavioral control, the authors said in a 2010 article. Although the Supreme Court ruled in 1986 that executing people with severe mental illness is unconstitutional, many death row inmates who suffer from some form of mental illness, including schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or delusions, do not fall within that exemption. So just a little background on that exemption that was passed in 1986. It only addresses people that have an intellectual handicap, meaning people that have an IQ that is so low that they literally, their brain cannot comprehend that something is wrong. There is not an exemption or anything like that for someone that suffers mental health-wise. So from schizophrenia, it talked about bipolar disorder, things like that. There is no exemption for that at the time of this article. I do not know personally if there is one now, but I know that at the time of this, there was nothing like that. Okay? Under federal law, capital defendants, those are people that are sentenced to the death penalty, are entitled to a psychiatric evaluation to determine their competency to be executed. However, there are no uniform sentencing standards for people with combat-related PTSD. The outcome in each of those cases depends largely on other circumstances. So basically whether or not the judge thinks that it should be on the table or not. Some critics argue that all people, including combat veterans, should be held accountable for their actions regardless if the result is the death penalty. Attorney Giordino said the solution to this argument is simple. Combat veterans with PTSD should receive a death penalty exemption similar to those for minors and the mentally retarded. Wurtzel and Arsenegus noted that Giordino's proposed exemption may be too broad since some combat veterans may have been broken before their military service. However, courts must engage in a balancing act to prevent the injustice and immorality of executing a single combat veteran who has PTSD and or TBI at the time of the crime, the doctors wrote. It's difficult for the legal system to truly grasp what veterans with PTSD have experienced. This lack of empathy is a key obstacle to change. Andrew Brannon and others like him may not gain sympathy from people who lost loved ones to senseless acts of violence. Until society realizes how combat can change service members, the fate of capital defendants with combat PTSD will remain an open question. Yeah.
Can I write on
You can write on this one.
Oh, I didn't
But,
know.
yeah, don't write on this one. Yeah. Okay, so I want you to flip over to your, this one, the practice, I guess. Does this look familiar to you? It should, because it looks exactly like your quiz. Okay? Exactly the same. The questions just are tailored to this reading instead of the reading about extreme sports. So, and I'm gonna say this generally. I don't mean specifically you guys, maybe as a class, but I'm just gonna say it generally. I had a lot of people that for number one, with what is the author's viewpoint? I had people that said third person, which I understand because that's point of view, but this is a nonfiction article, so we're talking about their opinion on the topic. I also had a lot of people that gave me a sentence that said, kids, more and more kids are doing extreme sports. My friends, that's not an opinion. Okay? That is just a fact. Okay? So, look at the title, or the topic of it, look at the title, look at, what they're discussing in here. Then develop your author's point of view. This one should be very, very simple because it's already formatted in a way that you can restate it. What is the author's viewpoint in this article, Gary?
Veterans should not give the death penalty.
Veterans with what?
Oh, veterans with
Very good.
PTSD or TBI should not get.
Very good. Veterans with PTSD TBI should not get the death penalty.
Well, what's weird about this is this is what we practiced before. It doesn't just like an outright thing. You have to basically like guesstimate on what it would be about. Like on the extreme sports, I didn't know. I just literally guessed because there was no like definitive answer.
No sentence that said it.
Yeah, there was nothing that like really hinted at this is what the author really meant.
Yeah, you have to infer it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I think would be one of the most problematic.
What you want to do with articles like that, and like this even, is think about it paragraph by paragraph. If there are more paragraphs that support that they should not get the death penalty, then you're going to probably be able to accurately determine and assume that that's going to be their opinion. And that's kind of how it was with that practice as well. There are more paragraphs, more assessments of the dangers versus the thrill of it.
Yeah.
All right, what's the opposite of should not? Should. Great. So again, I am just going to rewrite that sentence and take out the word not. I'm not going to give textual evidence. I'm not going to give my own opinion. I'm just going to rewrite it, taking out the word not. Now, number 3 is going to support number 1, okay? Because remember, if we think about it like that little cartoon, the author here, Julia Phillip, is holding up a sign that says veterans with PTSD should not get the death penalty, and then she's got someone else that comes up with their own sign that says they should get the death penalty. How does she respond to those people? So we have A. People with PTSD should not be punished at all for the crimes they commit because they are mentally unstable. No, that's not what she's saying. She's not saying, nope, they're good, leave them alone. No, that's not what she's saying. People with PTSD should be excused from the death penalty like those who are intellectually handicapped. Yes, that is the correct answer. I would say 99% of all of my classes altogether got number 3 correct. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that because it seems like we got that. Now, remember, number 3 and number 4 are like sisters. Number 4 has to support number 3. So we are looking for a quote that talks about them being excused from the death penalty. Okay? So we have A. Some critics argue that all people, including combat veterans, should be held accountable for their actions, regardless if the result is the death penalty. Does that support that they should be excused? No. Although the Supreme Court ruled in 1986 that executing people with severe mental illness is unconstitutional, many death row inmates who suffer from some form of mental illness do not fall within that exemption. Does that talk about being excused from the death penalty because you have combat-related PTSD? Not really, no. Probably not going to be the best. Number 3. Andrew Brandon and others like him may not gain sympathy from people who lost loved ones to senseless acts of violence. No. Hopefully D is correct. Combat veterans with PTSD should receive a death penalty exemption similar to those for minors and the mentally retarded. Yes. Now, I need to determine which of these three is in letter D. Gary, what do you think? A. Very good. It literally says the solution is simple. Okay? Now, for this I had a lot of people tell me that on the quiz that the answer was research and statistics. I only gave it to 2 people because they showed me how their brain worked and why they thought it was research. If you, whatever it is that you're going to say, you have to be specific in why you think it's that one. Okay? Yes. Counterexample. Okay? So, as we look at this, for our constructor response, again, 99.8% of you got the entire sentence frame correct. Did it perfectly. And I mean across the board, all 5 of my classes. I had 2 people that told me that the author's ineffective. That tells me that you were not, and it wasn't anybody in this class, but that tells me that you were not listening to me all last week. Because I said about 18 million times that I will never give you an author that is ineffective. Never. Okay? So your constructor response is always going to start the exact same. The author is effective. In their response to the conflicting viewpoint because. Again, I did not memorize that. Didn't memorize it. It's literally just the question restated. That's it. Now, whatever you chose in number 5 comes down here to number 6 because they provide a solution. This last sentence is where I'm really going to challenge you. Okay? I'm really going to challenge you to be descriptive. Tell me why that is a solution. Tell me how that solution shows that they should be exempt. Okay? Don't just say, they said that they should get the same as the minors. That's not descriptive enough. You're telling me what the solution is, which is fine, but you're not telling me how that shows that they've provided a solution to the problem. Okay? So my idea of a perfect answer for this is the author points out that veterans with PTSD that commit a capital crime should get the same exemptions as minors and the mentally retarded. Yes, Zach.
So the only thing that makes mine a little bit different is that I didn't say that commit capital crime.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Did you put in there that veterans with PT? Yeah, you don't even need any of that, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, perfect, yeah. Okay, does anybody have any questions that they need clarified about this? No. Again, your quiz on Thursday, sorry. I'm all thrown off because today's Tuesday. Your quiz on Wednesday, oh my goodness, I just did it again. Thursday is going to look exactly like this. You're going to get an article. You're going to have these exact same questions. You're going to have the exact same constructor response. You're going to tell me that the author's effective, never ineffective. Okay? So yeah.